Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So welcome to the episode 19 of Engage Dialogue, live from Engage, CAST, DAV, and AVI Facebook page. I'm Charabot Chod. I am the Engage Project Manager of the Sustainable Development Cluster, and it is the greatest honor for me to be the moderating today's dialogue. The Think Next Acts Next, the Next Gen EU ASEAN Think Tank Dialogues, what we call in short Engage, is 2-year action proposed by the CAST and DAV and AVI and funded by European Union. And this Engage Dialogue aims to promote awareness among national and international stakeholders about Engage while promoting the visibility of EU contribution to the ASEAN and EU partnership, and we aim to share insight and perspective of Engage Fellow. Today we're back and we're going to discuss about the EU-ASEAN Korean cooperation and facilitation of mutual investment. With me in these discussions, I have Ms. Despoina Kotsi, currently the Fellow of Engage Project, specifically a member of Sustainable Development Cluster. And she's also the PhD candidate of the Public Law at the Athens Law School on the topic of her dissertation, the right to education, and she holds 2 postgraduate degrees. And she's worked as a lawyer in Athens, focusing mainly on public procurement issue and European funds. Thank you, Ms. Despoina, for joining with us. And I'm here from Cambodia. Despoina, how are you doing?
Hello, Rabuth. Good morning from Europe. I'm very glad to be here with you today. Very exciting for being invited to hold a discussion over this exciting topic of EU-ASEAN cooperation, green cooperation, and the prospect of mutual investment. Well, I will try to share my humble insight with you today, and I will try to give to our audience a broad outline of how the EU is offering funds to vulnerable regions and people in order to facilitate investment and facilitate the sustainable development. And from my research, I will also state some examples of how the Asian region has already launched some initiatives in order to also make this venture happen and promote sustainability.
Thank you, Despoina, for opening, and it's a great insight. I cannot wait to ask you the questions. So since today the topic we're going to talking about EU and ASEAN Korean cooperation. Before that, I would like you, Despoina, to explain a little bit more. What is the Korean corporations?
Okay, this is very, very interesting. When we talk about green cooperation, we must admit that this might sound like a very broad concept, a very broad idea. So we have first to clarify what green means, and then we are in a position to clarify what cooperation means, and then by combining the two terms, we will be in a position to let's say understand what this green cooperation is all about. So when we say green, we have in mind the elimination, for example, of greenhouse gas emissions, the protection of the natural environment, and the enhancement of the protection of natural environment. We also must keep in mind that we must implement a prudent use of natural resources, and of course sustainability. This means that we have to be always prudent and logical with the exploitation of natural resources. So in this direction, we can cooperate in order to achieve the same. So this cooperation can mean the mutual effort in order to provide each other technical assistance. It can mean an economical cooperation in order to establish and share economic funds and pulling these funds into the sustainable green targets. And of course, it can mean establishing a platform for sustainability and in the sustainable investment in order to, let's say, establish a common ground for policy dialogue, in order to identify new avenues of actions, in order to take stock on progress already done in sustainable development. And well, when we talk about investment exactly, this can mean how we can de-risk green projects in order to make them more attractive to private investors. And this way we can crowd in private capital in order to enhance and the momentum of green investment and sustainability and politics in sustainability efforts. So cooperation is this green cooperation. We have already established, we have already set a green purpose, which can affect the natural environment, the natural resources, maybe the introducing green technologies in order to advance the whole system. And afterwards, after we have set the green purpose, we can cooperate in various ways in order both at the national level and at an international level in order to achieve this the same. So we share. I can say that we share technical expertise in order to familiarize the less privileged with green technologies. We can share economic funds by establishing a mechanism of risk sharing in funding green projects. And of course, we can discuss at an international level, at a inter-regional level, about the measurable impact of green policies and let's say green technologies and everything that is under this topic, which is, I must say, which is very new, and it is very highly top on the agenda again, because in view of the COVID-19 crisis, because we need the recovery, and we take this also into account in order to, let's say, mitigate the risk and the weaknesses deriving from the consequences of this, let's say, crisis we are confronted with.
Yep. Thank you. I heard you mention about the green political. So why we need the green political, and what is the need for the sustainable development? Maybe you can give a little bit start on that. Yeah.
So why yes, you're right. Why we need to go greener? Why do we need the green aims? This is very logical to be on the table. Well, this can be explained at various levels. The first is that we need to be, let's say, environmentally responsible. That means that this is the ecological aspect. I mean that we are confronted with an exploitation of resources. So we are confronted with a need, an objective need in order to tackle these difficulties and become more efficient in how we treat the environment. So this is the first line. The first line need for establishing a green cooperation.
Yeah.
At another level, we must be socially responsible. I mean that all people will benefit from gaining a better quality of living, a better quality of life. And we must keep in mind that sustainability and sustainable development goals by the United Nations are being presented like the pyramid of happiness. I mean, each one of these goals is aiming to providing happiness to people and make their lives better. So we hold also this responsibility. Another one is that the nations that are getting greener and becoming environmentally responsible, they gain national benefits. I mean, their economy is getting robust and stronger, and because they have alternatives, and because they have options, they have alternatives in order to facilitate economic development and
Yeah.
explore other avenues of industries. Also, this green cooperation can initiate international cooperation. So the international relations are getting better because we go hand in hand in order to tackle difficulties and make the world better. So this improves the relations between nations. For another aspect is that the environmental needs and the whole
Yeah.
transformation of the workplace is giving us the chance to think about the job transformation in the era of environmental crisis. So we need workers that that have the capacity to use green technologies. So this transforms the whole work landscape, and we need green cooperation in order to provide these workers, this labor staff, with the necessary capacities in order to let's say survive in a world that is always changing, and in a world that is facing green ecological threats. So another reason for for going greener is that that since we are tackling the environmental difficulties, we are acquiring political stability, because imagine a landscape that where environmental resources are exploited, so tensions are arising inside the society. So this green responsibility also entails a political stability. And last but not least, there is always an ethical reason for being environmentally responsible, because we are becoming people with awareness. We're becoming
Yeah.
people who are environmentally sensitive, and we are becoming people who are ready to be aware and tackle the threats and recognize the threats to the humanity. So
Yeah.
there's a whole spectrum of reasons for being environmentally responsible. And the first step is to recognize this need, and then take the steps in order to the other steps in order to let's say implement a concrete and complete environmental policy, which is so much needed.
Thank you, Despoina. Actually, I wanted to ask you the question regarding about responsibility or application of the government, the state or economic operator, but you have mentioned a lot from here. Even you also include with the citizen. Do you have anything else about the career of the sustainability of the application? Maybe you can add a little bit more regarding about this, either like stage or like the government itself. Yeah.
Okay, yes, of course. Well, the whole idea is about who are the carriers of this
Yeah.
environmental responsibility. There are two pillars. I mean, there is, I might say, there are three. There is a state, the governmental responsibility. On the other part, there is the responsibility on the part of economic operators, who are the market players, the industries. And there is a third pillar, who are the people who are the consumers of environmental products. So there is this distinction. So the government responsibility has to do a lot about regulating and administrative enforcement of all these legal and technical standards that are rising for conventions, for protocols, and make the government is also responsible to make clear to the economic operators that they must comply with these, let's say, technical or legal standards through an evaluation process. The evaluation process that must be consistent, complete, proportional, transparent, accurate, and prudent. I mean, an evaluation process that has the guarantee of being fair against the economic operators, because there is no excessive power of the state in terms of environmental responsibility. What we are supposed to do is always to be fair and just for and proportional to the environmental need. So the economic operators have the obligation to comply with environmental standards. And there are here comes the most famous principle about the environmental, social, and governmental responsibility, which is very common in terms of making enterprises into a way of being compliant, and the ethical compliance is also very relevant in this direction. So the enterprises, the economic operators must have in mind to be climate neutral, to take, for example, into account, depending on their activity, about air and water pollution, about biodiversity, about waste management is also a very relevant point, and a specific activity which is also very much affected. This has to do with the environmental responsibility. And of course, when we are talking about sustainability, there must always, the aim is to achieve always a balance between the state expectations and the economic operators' responsibilities. Well, this is a difficult, let's say, a difficult point, a difficult mission to achieve. But we must keep in mind that in terms of the rule of law, all are expected to comply with the administrative regulations. And in this direction, there are many independent regulatory authorities that set the green purpose, set the regulations, and they are there in order to monitor the activity of the economic operators and hold them responsible. So there is this is like a triangle between the state, the economic operators, and the consumers. And they are all three responsible proportionally in terms of environmental responsibility.
Thank you, Despoina. I think it's the really detail that you have mentioned about the triangle point regarding about the state, economic operator, and consumer. And this is understanding really well about the green operation and so facilitation of the multi investment. And I think it's a really good introduction to share about this. But however, like moving to the next question, I think this is the main question I really want to ask you. Can you give an example regarding about the EU and ASEAN between the public and also the private corporations in the green investment?
Well, in terms of outlining the forms of investment, we can focus on the public-private cooperation in green investment, and an example is the EU receiving an Asian economic operator offer bid in terms of public procurement. And in this term, for example, the EU market has already set the green requirements, the green criteria for launching a program, launching a project, so that any Asian economic operator can dive into the EU market and crowd in their private capital for a sustainable aim, a sustainable green project and a green aim. So this is one kind of example in terms of public-private partnerships, which is a form of public procurement. So the guarantees here are the green requirements, the green criteria. There is also the notion of stewardship. I mean that the economic operator is operating and executing the project under the auspice of the EU regulator, so that the standards are met. And in this way, both parties are, let's say, endorsing the project. I mean, endorsing the project, adopting the whole idea, the whole green idea, and the whole green measurable impact of the project. So in public-private partnerships, we must get proactive, setting the green criteria, and then letting economic operators for other countries, in this case the Asian region, coming into the EU market and executing prudently and efficiently the green project. So in another way, the EU or the Asian can use the grants, the funds of their development banks in order to facilitate investment, which is a public investment, in order to support one another. So in this context, there are also criteria for facilitating and choosing to invest and provide public support to the other country. These are the aid effectiveness principles that have to be met. This means that in order to fund the country, to give fund to a country, either the EU or the Asian, between the two countries, we must beforehand guarantee that there will be a measurable impact in terms of achieving a sustainable green aim. There also must be additionality. This means that we provide public support, public funds, because this project could not have been done in the same way, to the same extent, to the same scale, and without the support. I mean, we provide the aim because without this, you cannot implement the project in the same way without the public fund. Also, there must be, in order to provide public support, to use the public funds in order to provide investment for green projects, you must be neutral. This means that we not intend to distort the market in order to implement any of these projects. And of course, there must be a clear effect, how this effect will affect the lives of the people, the economy, or the how catalyzes the whole environment and the market environment and the green industry. So, and of course, in order to provide a fund to make use of this public support, there must be from both parties the obligation to adhere to the sustainable development goal of protecting the environment. So in order to provide support, either in the form of a public-private partnership in green procurement, either in providing funds and may use this mechanism tool of EU funds or Asian funds in order to promote mutual investment. In both cases, we implement some criteria in order to provide the aid effectively in one case, and in order to pulling in private investors in the EU market or the Asian market responsibly and with the guarantee of implementing the sustainable development goal in a let's say compliant way.
Despoina, I heard you mention again and again regarding about the funding, supporting. May I ask you where exactly the money will come from?
Okay, in this case, we have very promising examples from the Asian region. From my study, I was very excited to see that the Asian has established some funding mechanism tools being supported by the Asian Development Bank. And because we are talking about mutual investment and cooperation, this Asian Development Bank finances the project, having co-financers which happen to be let's say the European Investment Bank. So cooperation is already here. That happen to be the German Development Bank, the French Development Bank, the Republic of Korea. So the Asian has already made the initial step. So in another way, the European Investment Bank, the EU budget, based on the Treaty of the European Union, which is like a constitutional charter for the European Union, and in Article 21 of the Treaty of the European Union, providing the economical and environmental development of developing countries, and under the umbrella of eliminating poverty, can use the part of the EU budget and also use the just transition mechanism which has been established in view of the consequences of COVID-19, and also guaranteeing money from EU market from the auctioning of carbon allowances in order to facilitate, in order to crowding in money. So, and there are also other forms of funds, like the Regional Development Fund, like the Rural Development Fund, the Horizon Europe, the Cohesion Fund, and also the European Investment Bank has increased the target for climate from 25 to 50% lately, in order to tackle these deficiencies and provide support for environmental aims. So also this is where the money will come from. In a sum, the whole process is like the country makes a request, the European Commission or any competent authority assesses the request, it issues some bonds, let's say green bonds or other bonds, in order to raise the amount in which is necessary. The member state gets into a process of implementing the investment, and after achieving some milestones, it requests the disbursement in order to satisfy financial liquidity needs. So this is the concept of how the European Union funds are working, and I suppose that similar is the way that the Asian Development Bank or other financing mechanism tools are working. So it might seem sound complicated, but we are already implementing these mechanism tools, and it is a great chance in order to identify the green needs and make this possible to use the mechanism in order to tackle green deficiencies and needs.
Thank you, Despoina. I think like to the audience watching us from the Facebook Live, I think if who interested in the current project, they learn a lot from you regarding about how to look for the budget or the fund and the sort of process of receiving the fund for the green project. You mentioned about the EU part and also about the technical assistance support. So does EU already have the technical assistance mechanism?
Yes, and this is a technical assistance mechanism that is working not only for the EU, but is facilitating, as we said, the cooperation between international partners. This is the Invest EU, the mechanism that has the Invest Advisory Hub, when you can connect and share technical assistance between partners. And there is also the Invest EU portal, which facilitates the networking and the visibility of operators, of potential investors, in order to get to know each other and who is executing what and who is responsible for something, in order to, let's say, network and become visible to it's like establishing a collaboratorium of reflection about green aims and setting a forum. But I can say that in similar terms, the Asian has already established the Asian Green Recovery Platform in order to facilitate this exchange, and also the Asian Forum on Sustainable Investment, which are steps that I consider very generous and very optimistic for the future. And yes, I consider this very optimistic.
Thank you, but this is great sharing again. And I think I have one last question to you this point. I hope this is the last questions. And can you tell me like what is the added values of an EU and ASEAN green collaborations?
Well, I think that there is there is an extra value because from this cooperation, I think from this cooperation we are gaining this this plus we need for climate, this plus we need in environmental responsibility, because both regions have an institutional weight, a civic and official weight. I mean, EU itself and Asian or Asia, which already making huge steps into this direction. So we can use this way the different insights to showcase how strategic partnerships can be built, and by establishing a dialogue, by co-setting the purposes, by co-establishing the requirements between, I mean, technical assistance or economic cooperation, we are getting to see that there is mutual benefit from cooperating. And this makes us more open, open to dialogue, open to sustainability concerns, and there is always a benefit to the environment, to the society, to the economy, and of course, our international relations are getting more firm, more we're getting closer, and I think that we have much to anticipate from this cooperation, because I think that we share the same vision in terms of environmental responsibility. And for example, the ASEAN has already established a regional study, for example, on green jobs policy readiness in terms of how the work landscape will change in view of the green transformation. And the EU has already established the Just Transition Mechanism, who focuses on innovation, on digitalization, on green technologies. And we see that in critical matters, we see that in the upcoming needs, we are approaching things with the same mindset, with the same rules, with the same insight. So as long as we share the same thoughts, we can build on this in order to facilitate mutual investment and facilitate peaceful relations and international dialogue in other matters as well. So I am very optimistic, and I was very surprised to see how the ASEAN has moved towards environmental responsibility. And I appreciate that both countries have already showcased a level of integrity, a level of goodwill, and we both share the motto that people first, in order to tackle these environmental needs.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Despoina. Very good discussion today, and thank you for joining with us and coming together for the great discussion, and also the future on more sustainable and green to our earth. And again, thank you for audience watching us from the Facebook Live, and see you next week. So please stay safe and have a good time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.